Welcome to the 12th Annual Writers' Symposium by the Sea at Point Loma Nazarene University. I'm Dean Nelson on the journalism faculty at the university, and with us today is Eugene Peterson, an author of 30-some books, a pastor, a professor of spiritual theology, probably best known for his translation of the Bible into plain English, called the Message Bible. He rarely makes public appearances, and so this is a real treat for us. Reverend Peterson, welcome, and thank you for being part of our symposium this year. I want to talk about storytelling with you. You have said that stories invite us into a world other than ourselves. And I'd like to hear you explain what that means.
Maybe a world larger than ourselves. We're a storytelling people. And our lives are stories. They have plot, they have intent, they have other people. We're never the only person in the story. And the Bible is our greatest story.
Well, let's talk about your translating the Bible into modern language. Somebody once said that all translation is betrayal. How do you think about what you did with translating the Bible into modern English with a statement like that?
I think it's pretty snobbish. It's an old phrase, you know. Translator, traitor. Sounds better in Latin. But where would we be without translators? Now the fact is that every language is different. So you cannot literally translate from one language to another. When you do, you just end up with misinformation, misunderstanding. So the worst translations are those translations that are trying to be literal.
Wasn't it Luther who said literalists were lemmings?
That's right.
Of course, you're not Lutheran. Well, keep going though, because that whole literal thing, that's a big deal in some cultures.
Well, it is, and it's unfortunate, but I think it's probably, people want to be true to the Bible. They want to keep this. This is a sacred text. They don't want anybody tampering with it. So they think that if they can just get it, literal, then nothing else can creep in. But each language has its own colloquialisms, vernacular, rhythms, syntax. I like what Kwame Bediako, an African theologian, scholar, says, and he's talking about Africa, where they have a lot of different languages. He said, every time the Bible is translated, it gets fresh meaning, because every language has its own unique quality. And so every time it's translated, another language gets to put in its 2 cents worth in the ramifications of this text. Like a stone, a gemstone, that you turn it a little bit and new light comes off of it. The stone doesn't change, but the light, the hue, the vibrations, they change a little bit. So every time the Bible is translated, it expands. It is not diluted, it's larger. And I think that's true.
What's too far, though? I've seen the Leadership Bible, the Skateboarders Bible, the Living Bible. Mine died. I didn't know what to feed it. But what do you do with trying to put it so much into a colloquial culture? Is there a distortion problem there?
There can be. There's always a temptation to try to be relevant or cute, eye-catching. I had an editor. I had editors on a different editor for every book of the Bible. Their job was to make sure I was staying true to the text and not distorting it. What I was trying to do, Dean, was from the very outset, I was thinking, if Isaiah was saying this in America, how would he say it? I didn't want to do much interpretation. I didn't want to do explanation. That would be going the route of paraphrase. But I wanted to say it in such a way. I thought, nobody in Isaiah's time had to go to a dictionary or a handbook to find out what he was talking about. I wanted to translate in such a way that the images he used were images that would be recognizable to somebody in my congregation or the man on the street. And it's not easy. It's very hard, and you're always kind of walking on the edge of a precipice, too much, too little. But I had my friends, I had my editors, my scholars who checked what I was doing, and I wanted to use the word lucky in the Beatitudes. Blessed sound a little too religious. And it's in Hebrew and Greek, the word they used, it was not a religious word. It was happy. Many translations now say happy. I liked lucky. You know why I liked lucky?
Why?
Because there was a woman in my congregation who had never come to church. She was 40 years old. She was kind of an ex-hippie. Still, she wasn't ex, really.
I was going to say, can you be an ex-hippie?
No, she wasn't. She wove all her own fabrics and wore clunky shoes, and she was beautiful in a kind of a folksy way. And she came, her husband was an alcoholic, her son was a drug addict, and she came to church because she had friends she'd met in Al-Anon, but she always slipped out. She never came and visited and shook my hand at the door. I never knew who she was. Nobody told me who she was. And then one week, I was starting a series of sermons on David. And she came through the door and she shook my hand and she said, "Pastor, thank you. I never heard that story before." And the next week, every week, "I never heard that story before. I feel so lucky." And then she kept using the word lucky. "I feel so lucky." Well, suddenly the word lucky had a biblical sound to it. Surprise. Never knew this could happen. So I tried to put it in the Bible. And my editor said, "Eugene, you can't do that. There's a whole subculture out there that thinks lucky is a nickname for Lucifer. And they'll just trash the whole thing just because of lucky." So I had to give up.
What'd you use?
I kept blessed. I said, "You are blessed when."
Oh, okay. I guess I should have known that had I read your book. Well, on the whole thing about translation, though, isn't reading itself a type of translation?
It is. Reading is one of the hardest things we do. Most difficult things we do to do it accurately. I just wrote a book about reading, and I was amazed at how difficult it is.
This is the book, Eat This Book, right?
That's correct.
Marvelous. Actually, I have read that one.
You're lucky.
You want to do this symposium for me next year?